But I wanted to turn this conversation briefly towards something else. I wanted to turn it towards a new science that took hold of the world in the last 100 to 150 years, and that's the science of psychology. Before psychology, when a human being experienced difficulty emotionally, they went through a tough experience, or they wanted to overcome their sadness and their grief, for example, right? They would turn towards religion before psychology. Or they would turn towards philosophy, because philosophy asked the question, what is pain? Why is there suffering in the world? What is this world all about, right? Philosophers try to answer this question. So this doesn't matter what religion, people turn towards religion to answer their questions of the things that were troubling them in their heart. But then philosophy and even the spiritual study of psychology, spirituality, they basically got replaced slowly with this new thing we now call psychology. And psychology is an attempt to understand ourselves, understand our deepest thoughts, understand our subconscious, understand our emotions, understand other people's behavior, our own behavior, right? You people go to a therapist and say, why do I get so angry all the time? Why can't I stop crying? Why do people treat me this way? Etc., etc. And, I'm a student of psychology myself. And I can tell you, it's a very elaborate science. It's an exhaustive study. It's not just one subject. It's actually multiple departments: social psychology, personality psychology, abnormal psychology. These are worlds within worlds within worlds. And people have dedicated entire academic careers to exploring more and more areas of psychology. All of it, by the way, is connected to something in the Quran. Allah said, "Sadurihim ayatina fil afaqi wa fi anfusihim." We'll show them our ayat inside themselves. And what is psychology doing? It's an exploration of the self. That's what it is. But it fundamentally removes God from the equation. Now, like I said, science without purpose can give you chemical weapons, can give you addictive drugs. Psychology with the removal of purpose, removal of Allah from the equation, what does it give you? Something has to be there that is the ultimate truth. And for what happened in the world of psychology, and what's even crazier is not just in academic psychology, because of social media, something else happened before I get to my observations. And that is that in any subject, let's say physics, any subject, let's say mechanics, there are people that actually know mechanics, they actually know physics, and those are professors and PhDs and researchers, but they don't have a YouTube page. But there's an 18-year-old who's read a couple of books on it, and he's got 5 million followers on his YouTube page, and he's a much more popular content producer on physics, even though some of his physics is a joke. If academics actually looked at his work, they'd say, what is this? But he's got more followers because now you can present content in a more interesting way, even if it's not well researched, and it will sound convincing, right? So what happened with the world of psychology? There is PhDs and research and analysis and books, and then there are people who come up with their own content, and they'll come up and say, let me tell you what a narcissist is. Let me tell you what a toxic person is. Let me tell you how to draw boundaries. Let me tell you about trauma. And you've got these people that just became self-diagnosing. And now these terms became popular among even the Muslim community. Now you have a young man saying, my father is so toxic. He's always gaslighting me. I need to draw some boundaries between myself and my dad because he's really getting in my emotional space, and I need some healing. And I need to have some self-care. So what used to be arrogance can now be called self-care. What used to be bad akhlaq can now be called drawing a boundary. What used to, what used to be somebody's telling you a harsh truth, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, meaning you're telling somebody a truth that maybe they don't want to hear, but they need to hear it. You say, this is gaslighting. I'm being gaslit. So now what we do is we take psychology and we actually undermine some of the most important experiences in our lives, because the ultimate thing is I need to feel good. Anything that gets in the way of me feeling good is bad for my psychology. So the ultimate goal is to keep yourself happy. Anything gets in that way, it's toxic, it's narcissistic, this person is narcissistic, they're not drawing their out boundary, I'm being triggered, you're being triggered. What does the Quran say about that? What happens when you have and by the way, I'm not dismissing somebody having a traumatic experience. I don't dismiss that there's such a thing as narcissism. These things exist. What I'm saying is we have turned them into weaponized terms. We don't even understand them ourselves. And it's actually starting to impact the way we think about our own religion. We're not even contemplating how many of these concepts violate principles of the Quran. Direct principles of the Quran. I'll just give you one example. In Surah Al-Tahabun, Allah Azza wa Jalla said, and this is what I recited at the beginning of this khutbah, Allah said, مَا أَصَابَ مِن مُصِيبَةٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. whatever calamity happened to you, whatever struck, any kind of calamity that struck, somebody got in a car accident, somebody got diagnosed with a disease, somebody's family member passed away, somebody lost a job, somebody got into a fight with their spouse and they're getting divorced, somebody, ran away from home, somebody, they don't want to deal with their family anymore, so they blocked every number and now they're just gone forever. You have a brother that doesn't talk to you, won't pick up your calls, won't respond to your text messages. You have a son who hates your guts. You have a mother who just walked away from the family. It happens. People experience different kinds of calamities in life. مَا أَصَابَ مِن مُصِيبَةٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. The first thing Allah says, nothing struck anyone ever except that Allah allowed that to happen. Number one. But then the question is, why did Allah allow something so terrible to happen? And Allah says sometimes in this ayah, there are many ayat on this, but this ayah, Allah teaches us a powerful lesson. He says, وَمَن يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ يَهْدِي قَلْبَهُ. Whoever truly has faith in Allah, Allah will guide that person's heart. Allah will guide their heart. And what is Allah saying? Allah is saying, my heart feels anxiety, my heart feels anger, my heart feels sadness, my heart feels frustration, my heart feels this person got away with something, they deserve justice, they got away with it. My heart feels that it was unfair, my heart feels unrest, my heart feels all of these things. But if I have iman in Allah, Allah will guide my heart through these negative emotions. Actually, some of those negative experiences are a test of my iman, and if I do have iman, Allah will guide my heart. In other words, I'm supposed to go through some of these difficult experiences to truly experience guidance. I have to go, and this will be the way my iman gets secured. And iman is the greatest asset a human being can have, because on Judgment Day, the only thing that matters, إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. The only people, nothing will be of any benefit except people who come before Allah and they have a good heart. And the only way to have a good heart is to have iman in that heart. And the only way to have iman in that heart is Allah will guide that heart. And the only way that heart to be guided is to go through a tough experience and hold on to your faith anyway. And not let that be shaken. And you stay the course. So this is a remarkable thing Allah has said. In this ayah, Allah is telling us to face a traumatic experience, to face it, to deal with it, but deal with it with faith and not let it change you. And this is why the best people that ever lived, the prophets themselves, every one of them are victims of trauma, if you want to use psychological terms. Every one of them were surrounded by toxic people. Every one of them had their boundaries crossed. Every one of them. Every last one of them had to experience narcissism. Isn't it? Didn't Ibrahim alayhi salam have a toxic father? Didn't Yusuf alayhi salam have narcissistic brothers? Didn't they? Isn't he a victim of family abuse? Wasn't he being gaslit when he was being called a thief? Isn't this what was happening to them? Even Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he's being expelled from his own home, he turns back to his father and he uses Ya Abati. He turns, my beloved father, Ata'tu fidil al-hub. He turns to his father and says, Dad, I still love you. You may not be good to me, but that doesn't mean I will no longer be good to you. And I'll still pray for you to be forgiven. La astaghfirannak. I'll pray for you still. Because maybe Allah will turn your heart. I can't do anything about it. I have to leave now. That's okay. But I still care about you. He doesn't say, you know what? You are a narcissist. You are a toxic person. I'm glad now there's a distance between us. I need to keep you away from my own personal healing. This is not his attitude. This is not his approach. What we have done is we have created, and these judgments, these labels, they are against the fundamental teachings of our deen. And I'll leave you one last, especially within our families. Okay, you could have an argument between husband and wife. Happens. Okay, don't raise your hand. But if you have an argument, husband and wife, and one of you says, you're such an abuser. You're such a gaslighter. Instead of, what does the deen tell us to say? وَقُلْ لِعِبَادِي يَقُولُوا الَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ يَنزَغُ بَيْنَكُمْ. Allah says that tell my servants, say something that is better and more beautiful. Because shaitan will try to cause friction between you, chaos between you, discord between you. If there's an argument happening and you hear something painful, you could respond with something that will make things worse. You can also respond with something that can change the direction of the conversation towards something better. Allah is not telling you to walk away from the conversation. Allah is telling you to deal with the conversation. If the conversation is completely out of hand, Allah is saying, إِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. When the ignorant address them, they walk away peacefully. They say peace. They don't walk away stormed out. They walk away peacefully. But in this ayah, Surah Al-Taghabun, I learned something I was fascinated by. Being a student of psychology, I was fascinated by it. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِنَّ مِنْ أَزْوَاجِكُمْ وَأَوْلَادِكُمْ عَدُوًّا لَكُمْ. Those of you who believe, some among your children and among your spouses, there may be enemies for you. This is in Medina. The surah was revealed in Medina. Rasulullah ﷺ was living among the Jewish and Christian tribes, and he was also among the Muslims were actually leading towards nifaq. They were leading towards hypocrisy. And you don't know in your family who really has iman, who doesn't. There was a mix. And Allah is that. Now the Prophet ﷺ says, get ready for Badr or get ready for Uhud. And some family members saying, why are you going to get yourself killed? Stay home. Just tell them you got sick. I'll just say you overslept. And tell them later. And they're trying to hold you back. They're trying to, because they don't want him to go. Well, why do you have to go every morning at Fajr? Can you just stay? And they're having these conversations. And Allah Azza wa Jal tells him that there may be among you so people that the family is so extreme that they might even be enemies for you. That extreme. I mean, you don't use this ayah and go home and say, now I know what you are to me. إِنَّ مِنْ أَزْوَاجِكُمْ وَأَوْلَادِكُمْ عَدُوًّا لَكُمْ. No, it's not. This is an extreme case. These are extreme cases. The word adu is not used lightly in the Quran. Okay, but this is the extreme case. Fine, an extreme case can exist. An extreme case where your own spouse and your own children, according to Allah, are what? An enemy. What do you do in the extreme case? Well, what you do from the pop psychology perspective, the Instagram psychologist can tell you what you do in such extreme cases is you draw some boundaries and you walk away and you heal yourself and you declare them abusers and all this stuff. And what does the Quran say? وَإِن تَعْفُوا وَتَصْفَحُوا وَتَغْفِرُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Okay, and if you can forgive, if you can overlook, you can cover their mistakes. Okay, at one point they became really aggressive, but now they're really sorry about that. Don't bring it up again. Tasfahu. Safaha means to turn the page. From safha. Turn the page. You know what that means? I remember what you did last year. You remember? I still remember those words. Do you remember what you said? That's not tasfahu. I'm still traumatized about that. Let me repeat it again as if it happened right. I didn't say it again. No, but it still hurts me though. I'm still traumatized. Therefore, I need to do dhikr of that all the time. I need to give you a khutbah about that all the time. Allah says, if you can just turn the page, then Allah is forgiving too. Maybe things will reconcile. Even in the worst case, there's room for reconciliation. There's room to make things better. But if the hearts are not, if you're too absorbed in yourself, you're not going to look for a solution. The only thing that you want to serve is your wishes. And so this is the last thing I will share with you. The direction that psychology is going in now, pop psychology, reminds me of the ayah of Surah Al-Jathiyah. أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ وَأَضَلَّهُ اللَّهُ عَلَىٰ عِلْمٍ. Did you see someone who takes their feeling, their empty feeling, and they turn it into their God? Their God has become their feeling. And Allah allows this person to be misguided even though they have knowledge. عَلَىٰ عِلْمٍ. They can know. They can be a PhD. They can be a doctor. They can be a professional. But they are being led by their emotions. And they give themselves a new diagnosis and give other people a diagnosis depending on how they make them feel. Today you're a narcissist. Tomorrow you're an abuser. The next day you're a toxic person. The next day you're this. The next day you're depressed. The next day you're, you have attachment issues. You just throw out these diagnoses. Label people. أَضَلَّهُ اللَّهُ عَلَىٰ عِلْمٍ وَخَتَمَ عَلَىٰ سَمْعِهِ. So Allah says, and this kind of a person, Allah will put a ceiling on their hearing. You know what that means? That means it doesn't matter if you try to reason with them. You cannot reason with people who live by emotions. Many of you have experienced this. When people are living by their emotions, if you're trying to be logical, it's like talking to a wall. But I feel. The feeling is, that's the God. خَتَمَ عَلَى سَمْعِهِ وَجَعَلَ عَلَى قَلْبِهِ غِشَاوَةً. And Allah places a cover over their hearts. وَمَن يَهْدِيهِ مِن بَعْدِ اللَّهِ. Who's going to guide them after Allah? That ayah, that last part of that ayah, who will guide them after Allah? You know what that means? They replaced Allah with their own feelings. That's why there's no more guidance for them. Because their ilah is actually Allah, but their ilah became their hawa. So Allah says, فَمَن يَهْدِيهِ مِن بَعْدِ اللَّهِ. Who's going to guide them after Allah? After they remove Allah from their hearts, what guidance can they have? On the flip side, contemplate Surah Al-Taghabun. When a person experiences difficulty and trauma and actual difficulty in their life, whoever turns back to Allah in faith, يَهْدِي قَلْبَهُ, Allah will guide that person's heart. Wallahu bi kulli shay'in alim. Allah knows everything. There's nothing Allah doesn't know. May Allah Azza wa Jal guide our hearts and not allow us to become, worshippers of our own feelings, and actually remain worshippers of Allah in the depths of our hearts. And may Allah not make us of those who easily pass judgment on others unjustifiably. I know the khutbah is already over, but one last thing I will share with you. We cannot judge another person's heart in Islam. I cannot point at you and say, you're a munafiq, you have nifaq in your heart. I can't do it. But there's no way for me to know. Even Allah did not let Musa know if Fir'aun has kufr in his heart or not. لَعَلَّهُ يَذَّكَّرْ أَوْ أَنْ يَخْشَى. Go talk to him nicely. قُولَ لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا. Both of you go talk to him nicely. Maybe he'll get a reminder. Maybe there's some part of his heart that can benefit from a reminder. You don't know. Ya Allah, it's Fir'aun. He kills babies. Come on. The guy's heart is made of some kind of special stone that will never crack. No. You don't know. You don't get to know. This is Allah telling Musa alayhi salam about Fir'aun. So I cannot judge another person's heart, but in this new psychology, I can easily judge another person's heart. The moment I call somebody a narcissist, I'm judging them for their arrogance. The moment I call somebody one of these terms, I'm not actually judging their actions. I'm judging the state of their hearts. Be careful. This is not something our deen allows. But we've made this a normal practice because we're enamored by these terms now. If you're going to understand these terms, if you're not a student of the subject, don't do it. Don't misdiagnose yourself and misdiagnose others. It's only creating a problem in our society and in our families.